Okay, aloha guys. Welcome to this week's discussion. This week I have convinced the grower up at Lyon Arboretum to take some time out of his isolation and his work schedule to talk to us about what he does up here and what's going on. So without further ado, Tim Kroessig. Tim, thank you. And can you just tell us, your job title and kind of what you do up here?
All right, so as Pete said here, my name's Tim. I'm the horticulture manager here at Lyon Arboretum. And if you're not familiar with Lyon Arboretum, we are the university's arboretum and botanical garden in the very back of Mānoa Valley near the Mānoa Falls Trail. We are currently closed right now, but definitely come check us out once all this passes and we're back to being open to the public. So I started off here at Lyon Arboretum more than a decade ago as a student in the University of Hawaii system, and I'm a alum of the botany department, and I have a degree in horticulture as well as botany. And so I run the growing facilities here at Lyon Arboretum, where we have 4 different growing spaces for various plants, tropical ornamentals, natives, and living collections, which we'll take a look at a little more in detail here. But we are a research unit of the University of Hawaii, so our primary focus is facilitating students and researchers in the University of Hawaii community with answering questions about plants, learning more about plants, and so we are a resource for you as students as well as for researchers and faculty.
Wow, right on. That was great. There's a lot there and a lot of good stuff. Did you ever take natural history?
I did.
Nice.
Indeed, yeah.
That was the first thing I thought.
Botany 450 was a great class. At that point in time, we were still having guest lecturers come in person, of course.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I really liked the variety of different topics covered, and it just seemed like a really great course to learn more about this place and what makes it special, and
Yeah.
this place we call home. So
Yeah, wonderful. And so getting back to where we are, you mentioned that the Arboretum is part of the university and that it caters to students and researchers alike, as well as tourists and the public. So you said there's 4 growing facilities here. Is that like 4 greenhouses and shade houses? And are they kind of divided up into, like natives or endangered things? Can you tell us about that a little bit?
yeah, sure. So at one point in time, let's see, like 3 of the 4 growing areas were greenhouses. But some of the facilities have become dilapidated, and so the roof is now missing, and so we've basically converted them into a shade house, which is, a structure where we can hang shade cloth. We have benches to grow plants, but it's very open to the environment. It gets natural rainwater, etc. So it's kind of like more of an open growing area, whereas we have other facilities like this greenhouse right behind me here, which has the poly panels for the roof, and it's a much more controlled growing area to some degree. Our greenhouses do have particular themes to them, but it still is kind of a miscellaneous assortment of plants. And I generally like to organize the plants in these growing areas based on their growing requirements, the size of the plants, and the stage at which the plants are at. So my main greenhouse here is generally going to be for propagating and starting plants, getting them going. It's a little more sheltered, a little more protected. We can keep a close eye on the plants while they're growing and developing. And then once they get bigger, a little more established, they can go into some of these areas that are a little bit more exposed, maybe get a slight bit less care, less of a close eye, but they're bigger, they're more established, and they're going to do fine on their own. The different growing areas also have different light levels, so that's something to keep in mind. is that with a vast collection like we have up here of hundreds of different species and thousands of different plants, certain plants like certain growing conditions, low light levels, high light levels, lots of airflow, little airflow. And so once we get to know the growing requirements of those plants, we try to position them in the growing areas where they're going to thrive and do the best that they possibly can.
Great. So that's interesting. I think a lot of people who aren't aware of, greenhouse growing and growing plants in a high number at a facility like this, it might not occur to them that you're going to have one greenhouse for ornamentals and one for endangered plants and one for Hawaiian things, but the way that you've got it set up sounds much more akamai in terms of, all different plants can be mixed together, but you've got it set up based on their cultural needs.
Mm-hmm.
So that sounds great. So I guess just two questions based off of that before we go into the greenhouse. In these different greenhouses that you've got here, are you working with, say, the grounds to put, plants out into the facility all around the grounds and the trails, and helping to supply them and their needs with that? And also, given that the Hawaii Rare Plant Program is essentially housed here at the Arboretum, are you also working kind of similarly with them and their needs for any restoration initiatives that might be going on with conservation programs?
Yeah, so that's a good point to talk about. And basically, the three main categories for the plants that we produce here up at Lyon Arboretum are going to be, for one, production for sale for our biannual plant sales, where we not only sell our plants that we grow here at Lyon Arboretum, which is an assortment of ornamentals, natives, edibles, some very interesting and unique plants that you might not find elsewhere, but we also invite nurseries from around the island to come and sell their plants. We now have craft vendors as well, so it's a really great, interesting event to get people up here, experience the Arboretum, and come away with some really nice, unique plants that you can have your hand at caring for yourself. So come check that out in the fall. I believe it's going to be in November, the Saturday before Thanksgiving, rather. So that's one purpose for the plants that we grow up here. The second being living collections to supplement the grounds here. We have about 18,000 accessioned plants that are planted throughout our 200 acres of grounds here at Lyon Arboretum. And over the years, some of those plants, may not continue to thrive in the conditions that they were originally planted. They may be damaged, or we may lose something to maybe a pig or something like that. And so those collections need periodic supplementation. And so I grow duplicates of a lot of the collections that are found out on the grounds here in the greenhouse. So when we want to supplement those collections, add to them, expand them, replace them, move them, we have plant material here in the greenhouse that can then be planted out into the grounds here. And then the third category would be long-term living collections that just remain in the greenhouse as either research collections or very rare and interesting plants that wouldn't necessarily thrive if they were planted out on the grounds. You mentioned the laboratories here. The Hawaiian Rare Plant Program is located here at Lyon Arboretum, and we do work closely with the seed laboratory as well as the micropropagation laboratory, and I can indeed point out some of the plants that we grow here in the greenhouse that have come from those labs. And so we are, the nursery in which those seeds and those plants that are grown in the labs get grown out to a larger size before they're either distributed to our partner organizations, for example, the Division of Forestry and Wildlife, or the Fish and Wildlife Service, or potentially, you know, the Ko'olau Mountains Watershed Partnership. We work with a variety of different organizations here at Lyon. And we also do our own watershed restoration here within Lyon Arboretum in Mānoa Valley. We have a few sections on the grounds where we're restoring the native species, and we're trying to get that watershed back up and healthy and diverse and allow it to support, you know, native organisms such as honey creepers and Kamehameha butterflies and whatever else that we can get to grow here and to thrive here in this natural ecosystem.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Thanks. You know, maybe a little segue. You mentioned honey creepers, and I saw a cyanea behind you.
Yeah.
Can we maybe go through the greenhouse and you can point out some plants and maybe could after you show us around, maybe just talk to us about like your favorite plants, something like that.
Yeah, sure, that works. Come take a look in the greenhouse.
All right.
So here we have one of the native bellflowers or Hawaiian lobeliads. In this particular one, the scientific name is Cyanea truncata, and it's only known from one valley on the windward side of Oahu here, and so it's a very, what we call a narrow range endemic, meaning it's only found in this particular range, and it's a very narrow range only within the island of Oahu. There's currently, I believe, one naturally occurring wild plant left, so it is critically endangered. And what you just saw was not the flowers, but what happens after the plant flowers is that it starts setting fruit. And so these are the immature fruits that you can see here. But if you could see a flower, you would notice that it's a very tubular, curved corolla or curved flower, which fit the bill of the honey creepers or the Hawaiian birds very perfectly. And so it's a good example of coevolution between a plant and a pollinator.
Can I see your arm?
There's the honey creeper.
Yeah, so we've talked about it a bit. I just saw it.
Evie.
Great. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, so here you can see some seedlings that actually came from the seed conservation laboratory. So after the lab does their viability and germination testing, the seedlings make their way into the greenhouse here. So these are some ko'olau from Maui. These are Hibiscus breckenridgei, also from Maui. And then we have, let's see, what else over here? We have some other cyaneas from the Big Island, just some baby seedlings here. But many of these plants that we work with in the Hawaiian Rare Plant Program, as well as in the greenhouse here, are extremely rare in the wild, and oftentimes within a pot here in the greenhouse, there's going to be more plants in existence, more plants here in the greenhouse than there are in the wild in existence. So, you know, there is a bit of pressure to make sure that we do our job and keep these plants alive, because it is the future of these species that is in our hands. So, you know, we don't take that responsibility lightly, and so we do our best to grow them up and keep them healthy and reintroduce them with our partner organizations to protected habitat.
Great. Okay. Can you tell us, a lot of people would probably wonder what's going on here.
Yeah, so the two basic ways that we propagate or grow plants here in the greenhouse are going to be by seed or through sexual propagation, or vegetatively through stems, through leaves, through methods like air layers, and that would be asexual propagation. And so most of what you see here is our seed sow area. So this is where we sow our seeds, generally into a very well-drained mix of perlite and vermiculite. We label them appropriately with a date, the accession number, etc. And then we patiently wait until we start to see something germinate. And so depending on the species, you know, they can take anywhere from 1 week to a year and a half or maybe longer to germinate. And then these cages that you're seeing here are to help protect some of our more delectable seeds from rodent predators, because we do have rats that come into the greenhouse and they'll dig up an entire flat of seeds that we just spent a lot of hard time and work sowing and preparing. And so we want to make sure that the rats damage as few of our plants as possible. And these cages are a really good way of excluding rodents from those cages, from those flats of seeds rather.
Quite the dynamic here. You've got and it's some of the rarest stuff on earth here, brand new stuff from seeds you're germinating, and then looks like on this side you've got stuff like you mentioned for the other avenue, kind of getting ready for resale, ornamentals. Some of
more of the generic stuff.
well, except for the orchids. With
Right,
the,
except
you know,
for the orchids.
the
Well,
best
the generic
ever. This is
phalaenopsis.
Garyanthe skinneri, and a nice one. This is one big plant. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, so we have quite an assortment of plants, and you know, like diversity really, really helps me personally and the collection as well, because it doesn't allow the pest pressure or the disease pressure to really build up, because we don't have a monoculture. We have such a diverse collection here that there isn't going to be one pest or one disease that goes through and wipes out the entire collection. But it's usually isolated outbreaks of pests or diseases that we can then go in and take care of accordingly with pesticides, with an integrated pest management system, and we can effectively do that and not have large-scale outbreaks, and a lot of that is due to the diversity of our collection.
Well, and look at this beauty. Can you tell us, for those that don't know, what's up with these pots here in the corner?
Well, you couldn't quite tell right now because it doesn't have a distinct structure coming out of the ground here, but this is the Amorphophallus titanum, or the corpse flower, Titan corpse flower.
Titan arum.
Titan arum, there you go. And this is the vegetative portion, and believe it or not, this whole thing right here is just one single leaf, and it'll never grow necessarily more leaves than this. It'll grow larger, it'll grow taller, but it's not going to branch out and have a huge canopy. And Amorphophallus have a very interesting life cycle in that every year this vegetative portion will grow, and it'll collect nutrients through photosynthesis, through its leaves, and it'll store it down in an underground structure called a corm. And that corm grows and grows and grows over the course of years, and then eventually when it has enough storage reserves, it'll shoot up that massive inflorescence, which this plant is so well known for. That really stinky corpse flower that you hear about on the news. They have a couple of specimens at Foster Botanical Garden as well. But the interesting thing is you'll never see a plant with a leaf and the inflorescence at the same time, but it'll always be either the leaf or the inflorescence, and that's just how the life cycle of this really unusual, strange Titanarum
And it's
has evolved.
the largest inflorescence on Earth.
Sure is.
Okay,
So
great.
here you can see a couple, this is a different species, but you can see some of the flowers of this particular species.
Does that look familiar to you
Down
guys?
here.
It's the same group as like anthuriums.
Mhm.
Okay, can you maybe show us a couple things outside?
Yeah, sure. So that's Aescyananthus speciosus real quick before we go outside. A cool sunbird pollinated
Gorgeous.
vining thing that does well in the hanging baskets.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah, so let's go check it out. Wait, real quick before we go out, little smell-o-vision. You guys can't smell it, but this is a lovely Samoan gardenia.
Wow. Thing's
Cabernet Montana.
huge.
And it just smells wonderful, super sweet, very nice. Almost like a gardenia and Pua Kenny Kenny. It's a really, really nice fragrant plant. So we grow plants not only for their visual appearance, but for their fragrance as well. And then this growing area out here, again, is going to be the more open, more exposed growing area. And so this is kind of what we call our holding area, where things are held before they're planted in the ground, kind of hardened off a bit.
Acclimatization.
Yeah, acclimatization to make sure they're going to thrive once they go in the ground. And again, you know, trying to organize these plants kind of according to their cultural needs. So you have shade cloth here, which cuts down on the sun's rays and cools off this area, keeps it a little shadier. So we have things like anthuriums, ferns, begonias, and then some alocasias here under the shade cloth because they like these lower light levels and they like it a little bit moister.
And guys, seeing these Colocasia Black Knight just reminds me that if you folks ever get an opportunity to come and tour the Arboretum, the Micropropagation Lab, any of the facilities up here, do it. Especially because the Rare Plant Program houses under the cultural portion of its mission, you know, like almost all of the original canoe plants, all of the kalo that was initially brought over. There's a lot of different varieties, and they are stunning. The diversity, what they're used for, some for eating on their own, some for wrapping, all sorts of different things. So this place is a treasure, and I was just reminded of that when I saw that iconic
we do have
leaf.
many of the Hawaiian kalo growing out on the grounds too in our dryland mala. But I have many of what is growing in the lab represented in the greenhouse as well. But I have some ornamental stuff, just like we just saw with that Black Knight. That is not a canoe plant, but a selected cultivar.
Yeah, it reminded me of the Uahia Pele.
Right. Nice.
So this guy is, like I just said, inside as an anthurium, which are you know, iconic ornamental cut flowers here, but is the same family as that huge Titan arum that Tim was telling us about inside.
Here's another cool little plant.
The bat plant.
Bat flower. Taka chanterii. Kind of a neat tripped out inflorescence there with these strange little structures that hang down there.
I saw these things like by the river, like by running water in Thailand.
Huh. And so these are the capsules after the flowers.
Wow.
Pretty much done, I think.
And then they can just empty out. Wow, fantastic. The genus is Taka.
Actually, maybe those are the flower. Huh. If they're open like that, the flower.
Here's the seeds forming on the spade. Wonderful. Do you want to, is there a particular group of, out of all these plants that is your favorite?
I certainly like the natives, like this Ohia lehua right here. This is a pretty spectacular, obviously prolifically blooming Ohia lehua, or Metrosideros polymorpha. You know, the Hawaiian flora evolved here in isolation, and so many of the species we have here are endemic and found nowhere else on Earth. And so, growing up out here in Hawaii, you know, I did a lot of hiking and learned a lot of native plants, and so that is a group of plants that's, you know, close to my heart, and I'm interested in doing what I can to malama the aina and protect our watersheds and our native ecosystems. So certainly native plants are some of my favorites. But the other group that I really like would be the carnivorous plants.
Oh yeah. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah.
I know Tim is very serious carnivorous plant grower and collector and researcher. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I forgot. We've got native. Can you tell us about carnivorous plants here while I get some close-ups?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you guys all know about the Venus flytrap. We've probably all had one and killed one because you bought it from a hardware store or a garden shop and brought it home and played with the traps and inevitably probably watered it with tap water and killed it. And the thing with these carnivorous plants is they're really sensitive to nutrient levels in the water. And so you have to be really careful about the quality of your water that you use to grow these plants. And they need very low levels of dissolved salts and ions in the water. So really the best bet is going to be rainwater. And so we grow drosseras or sundews, which is what you're getting a close-up of right there. And we do actually have one native species of sundew right here.
A native sundew,
Yeah,
a native
Pinky
carnivorous
mallow.
plant, guys.
From the Alakai swamp of Hawaii.
Wow, look at this one.
And so this one is found all over the world, but it's native to Hawaii as well. So what is the term for that?
Guys.
Right, indigenous. Got it. And so these guys generally occur in a habitat that's fairly saturated, swamps or bogs. And so that's what we try to replicate, those conditions here in the greenhouse.
See some are flowering even.
Yeah, those are pinguiculas or butterworts there. And they have tiny little microscopic sticky hairs on the leaf surface. You can see some of the minute little bugs that have been caught and are being absorbed and digested by those leaves and the glands there. And then we have some super small little species like this Drosera scorpioides, which is pretty cool.
Look at how small compared to his hand, guys.
Yeah. And so these we call pygmy sundews.
So within the carnivorous plants, we've got things that have these sticky trichomes, sundews. You've got things like Venus flytraps.
Right.
You've
the
got
snap traps.
You've got things like the pinguiculas that don't have quite as big the glands as the sundews. They've got the glandular leaves. Now you've even got all of the pouches. Can you tell us? I see one pouch or
right, the pitfall traps or the pitcher traps. Right. There you go. So yeah, this is an American pitcher plant, or Sarracenia is the genus. Sarracenia purpurea specifically for this guy. And yeah, basically they've developed these leaf structures that act like little pitchers that fill up with water and digestive enzymes, and almost like our own gut, where it's a mixture of different microorganisms, digestive enzymes, and then there's glands on the inside of these pitchers that will digest and absorb, rather the glands will absorb the nutrients that is a result of the broken down insects that land in there unsuspectingly.
Do you have cephalotus or Nepenthes?
I don't have cephalotus. That's the West Australian pitcher plant. That one's a little bit harder to grow, and I haven't tried my hand at that one yet. But we do have some Nepenthes or tropical pitcher plants over this way. Real quick, this is a real cool little anthurium relative too.
Wild.
What is it again? Spathocarpa. And so you can kind of see, this is the inflorescence, how it's basically a leaf, modified leaf, with a set of flowers in the middle. So it's kind of an ancestral morphology for for an inflorescence like that, related to the anthuriums again.
Oh yeah.
So this is our pitcher plant collection here in Nepenthes, which is a group of plants, you know, typically from the subtropics and tropics. Center of diversity is like Borneo, Malaysia, Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and there are approximately, you know, 175 described species, some of which are very rare, some of which are very widespread and common, and a whole bunch of hybrids that are both naturally occurring as well as some that humans, of course, have created. And so, you know, there's a whole community of collectors out there, and I have about, like a dozen hybrids and half a dozen species in this collection. So this one here is Nepenthes ampullaria, and this has some smaller, little stouter pitchers. And this species has actually evolved to be more of a detritivore as opposed to a strictly carnivorous plant. So it kind of catches falling leaf litter, maybe an unsuspecting insect or two, whatever falls into these pitchers. But you can see that the lid on these is really reduced and super tiny.
Right.
Whereas some of these other ones act like a little umbrella, shielding the pitcher from rainwater. And you can actually see like the water level in the side of these pitchers. You know, it isn't overflowing because basically they don't want rainwater to dilute the juices that they got going on in here, because there's digestive juices, there's microorganisms, and so it's kind of a balanced ecosystem, whereas this one has a little bit of a different strategy here.
So biologically, they're generally a vining species, and the pitchers are growing off the end, kind of in a modified tendril off the end of the leaves.
Right.
So it's kind of easiest to see on these ones, guys. You see, it's a vine that kind of slowly grows, and as it grows, it maintains the leaves only at the top, and will drop them kind of older ones, and the pitchers grow right off the tip of the leaves. And they are dioecious, correct?
Yeah, dioecious, right? Male and female, separate plants. And so, yeah, to make seeds, you got to have both male and female plants. And then in cultivation, you got to be the pollinator as well.
Right. Wow. Well, I know that I've taken up a lot of your time. I really appreciate you, you know, taking time out of a busy greenhouse and isolation too.
Yes.
So do you guys take volunteers? If people want to learn more, or if they want to volunteer, can I, if they reach out to me, can I get them your email address or?
The best thing to do is check our website for updates, because right now we are closed to the public, so we aren't accepting volunteers currently with the current situation. But we do plan to continue to accept volunteers, and we also have student hire positions available. That's how I started. Is I went to school at Mānoa and worked up here as a student hire. It's a really good option. Flexible schedule, and so you can work, you know, with me here in the greenhouse, potentially the grounds department, the education department, or even one of the laboratories if you prefer lab work. So there's a lot of different opportunities up here at Lyon to get involved, to learn more about plants, and you know, to just really immerse yourself in nature. We have 7 miles worth of hiking trails here. And so all sorts of different opportunities to come up and to learn, and to be, you know, inspired to learn more about nature and to care more about this planet, and do your part.
Yeah, the planet is healing mega right now.
Yeah.
A break. Okay, thanks a lot, Tim. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank
you.
you guys. Stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Social distance. Let's do this. We got it. Hang in there, guys.